Welcome to another edition of Jazz Smack Postgame, where the Jazz took a loss tonight in the Delta Center against the New Orleans Pelicans. Let's go ahead and talk about it and see where we stand at the current time.
Jazz Smack, your source for information and analysis about the Utah Jazz and NBA basketball. Jazz Smack is a community for passionate Utah Jazz NBA fans.
So the Jazz sat their entire starting lineup tonight other than Isaiah Collier. And obviously the whole tank mode is in play 100%. After winning the last game, the Jazz knew that they had to lose this game. So they gave Hardy every opportunity to go ahead and lose this game. I mean, that was clear from the get-go. It was obvious from the starting lineup that played. And there are a whole bunch of guys who were healthy. I'm sure that Colin Sexton was not happy about sitting out right after, getting a few minutes in the last game, and now he's back to sitting out. And I'm sure that frustrated him immensely. But the Jazz are in tank mode. They have to lose these games. I mean, that's the bottom line. They have no choice. And that's just the way it is. And that's the situation that the NBA has presented us, and that's what we have to do. Ainge knows that. Zanuck knows that. This whole season would be a complete loss at this point if the Jazz all of a sudden started to win games. So they can't. And it's unfortunate for the fan base, but on the other hand, as a fan base, we get to see what the younger players can do, because it's going to be youth from now until the end of the season. And that's just all there is going to be to it. It's going to be youth. So anyway, I watched the New Orleans broadcast of this game, and their announcers, there was some criticism of the Jazz blatantly tanking and saying that it's not good for the fans and, it's just not good for the NBA, blah, blah, blah. Well, I would agree with that, but from a Jazz standpoint, I mean, the system is in place where the Jazz have to lose in order to maximize their potential of getting a top draft pick. I mean, that's the system in place. I hate the system. I despise the system. But that's the system that we currently have that we all have to adhere to. And the only way to do that is to blatantly lose. If you're in a situation in which the Jazz are in, where they need to try in some way find a top 10 player. How do you do that? You maximize your odds of doing that by picking higher in the lottery. And so you lose games in order to maximize your chances of picking higher in the lottery. And the New Orleans Pelicans announcers criticizing the Jazz for doing that, when the Jazz, as a franchise, is the team that hasn't had any number one picks. And quite frankly, they've probably had as few top lottery picks as any team in the entire NBA. The Jazz just have not had high draft picks. They had a few, as we will see when we look at the past draft history of the franchise, but they've had very few. So to get that criticism of a team, New Orleans Pelicans, who just traded away Brandon Ingram and received almost nothing in return for him, and their announcers are criticizing the Jazz tanking when obviously the New Orleans Pelicans are in tank mode themselves. And so it's actually a ridiculous criticism. It's absurd. The Jazz are the one team, the previous 2 years, the Jazz should have done a much better job of tanking. But they didn't. They screwed it up. And so this year, they're obviously all in on that, trying to maximize their chances of getting the highest pick that they could possibly can. That's the strategy. And that's the strategy they have to employ. So to get criticism from other teams who have obviously tanked and are tanking this year, the Brandon Ingram trade is representative of that. It's just absurd. That's all there is to it. And also, the play-by-play guy for New Orleans tonight, he went out of his way to say, oh yeah, Keyonte George, how hard the guy plays and how blah, 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 which is the one thing that the most glaring thing about Keyonte George that you could criticize is that he doesn't put forth, 100% effort all the time, especially on defense. So when the guy is saying, well, Keyonte George, when he was actually playing defense and he's saying how hard he goes at people, I mean, obviously just absolutely clueless about anything other than his own team. So he sees Keyonte George play against the Pelicans, and that's the only time he sees him play, and he happened to have a couple of good games, so he comes to the conclusion that Keyonte George plays hard all the time. Well, we all know that that's not the case. I'm not trying to get on Keyonte right now. I think Keyonte understands that he needs to play better on defense. I mean, he said that. He said that nobody's ever taught him defense before, and Hardy's trying to teach him defense, and that he needs to be a better defender. So Keyonte George understands that. We as fans understand that, who watch the games and are big fans lifetime fans of the game of basketball, understand that Keyonte George needs to get better on defense. So obviously, those New Orleans Pelicans announcers, the play-by-play guy is just clueless. I mean, that's all there is to it. So anyway, let's go ahead and talk about tonight's game and what exactly took place and where things stand. So it's interesting with the starting lineup the way that it was. The KJ Martin, Johnny Juzang, Kyle Filipowski, Brice Sensabaugh, and Isaiah Collier. And Brice, again, he's getting big minutes for, the last few games. All of a sudden, he's getting big minutes again. And he's getting a lot of shot attempts, which is nice, and he's in a really good rhythm. Now, we'll see if once this really long homestand comes to a close, whether this translates to games on the road as well. Now, Brice, before that injury, he was on a really nice roll on the road. In those road games, he put up some big numbers. And then he got injured, and then he came back, and he could never get into flow again. He wasn't getting big minutes. But now that's reversed itself. And now he's getting some minutes, and he's also getting into a flow. And we will hope that this translates into more of a flow in not only home games, where as a basketball player, the gyms that you're familiar with, it's a much easier game to play when you're shooting on rims and spaces that you are familiar with. It just is. Anybody who's played a lot of basketball and played in a bunch of different gyms knows that there are certain gyms you go into and you know you're going to have a rough night because of familiarity, and you just struggle in that particular gym. So playing at home, where you get familiar with the surroundings, you get more familiar with the spatial aspect of the court and the way things look from behind the basket, and all those things come into play. It's much easier to shoot the ball at home. That's just the way it is. That's the way basketball is. That's the way basketball has been from the beginning of time. That's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to win road games in not only NBA, in college. Not only do you have the fans to work against, it's just shooting the ball in familiar surroundings is infinitely easier than shooting the ball in gyms that you are not familiar with. And that, obviously with Kelly Olynyk's performance tonight, I mean, obviously Kelly was here for a while. He knows that court. He knows the fans. He's obviously a very popular player here still among the Jazz players who played with him and among the fans. I mean, popular guy, and he played really well. And he played well in part because he's familiar with the surroundings of the Delta Center, and that's all there is to it. But we'll see if this translates for Brice, and hopefully it does, and hopefully he still continues to get minutes, because the Jazz are obviously in tank mode right now, and it's going to be a youth movement, and hopefully Brice actually continues to get these minutes and continues to justify getting big minutes and continues to play well. So Brice was 9 for 18 from the field tonight, 3 for 9 on 3, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, and 1 turnover. So he scored 21 points. 21 efficient points. He shot the ball really well. If he can shoot 50% or better or close to 50%, that's a really good night for Brice, especially on reasonably high volume. 18 shot attempts. He didn't shoot any free throws, but 18 shot attempts, that's a really nice number for Brice. I mean, in all honesty, I would say that's even a few too many shots. But 18 is a big number for Brice in terms of field goal attempts. And with Filipowski tonight, he didn't get as many minutes as Brice, but he played 28 minutes, 5 for 12 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 turnovers. I mean, yes, Kyle Filipowski was a minus 32 tonight. I mean, that's a really bad number, obviously. He's on the court, and while he's on the court, the Jazz are a negative 32. That's a really bad number, but those plus and minus numbers, as we've always said, can be really deceiving, and it's really not representative because lineups are this and that, and it's just it's not a number that really tells you a whole lot. But overall, the 11 rebounds, 7 assists, and 12 points on reasonably good shooting. Yes, he only shot 42%, but he only had 12 field goal attempts and 5 for 12, so one made shot off of shooting 50%. I mean, those are good numbers for Kyle, especially that 11 rebounds and 7 assists. As we've always said, Kyle is a terrific passer. He displayed that yet again tonight, and this is why the Jazz need him to play, is because he is a high IQ player and he has the skills to actually make really nice high-level passes, and that's what we want to see. And we need him to continue to get significant minutes. That's the bottom line. He has to get significant minutes. He needs development. The remaining games of this year absolutely needs development. The other person in the starting lineup that let's talk about. So Isaiah Collier, one of the other things that the New Orleans Pelicans announcers mentioned tonight, since February 1st, Isaiah Collier is third in the NBA in assists. Third. Rookie point guard for the Jazz since February 1st. Now I know that's a really small segment of the season, but still, that's when he's getting significant minutes. So for the last month, he's actually received significant minutes. He's in the starting lineup, and he is producing at a really high level in terms of assist numbers. I mean, those are fantastic numbers for a rookie point guard. You could not ask for anything more. I mean, they were saying that he has an opportunity, Isaiah does, to overtake Stockton as the number one rookie assist person in Jazz franchise history in terms of total number of assists. I mean, that is an amazing accomplishment. Now, John Stockton was not starting as a rookie. He wasn't starting in his second year because John Stockton had an all-star in front of him in Ricky Green. So Isaiah Collier has a huge advantage over Stockton right now. And am I even suggesting that Isaiah Collier is as good a passer as Stockton, sees the floor as well? No, of course not. I'm not saying that. I would never suggest that. But Isaiah Collier is a really high-level passer. And he facilitates, he sees the ball, he understands. There was a play tonight where he received a long outlet pass where he was behind the defense on a fast break, and Isaiah Collier received that pass, and he couldn't catch it directly, cleanly, and then lay it up. So he had his back to the basket. He received the ball in the paint, a long outlet pass. He received the ball in the paint, and he saw KJ Martin coming up as trailing the play. So Isaiah Collier jumps up in the air. He tips the ball to KJ Martin cleanly, and that was the exact play. But you need court awareness. That was the exact play you need to make. But you need court awareness, and you need the vision to understand what's happening around you long before you ever get the ball. And he did that. He saw that play developing. He had his back to the basket. He saw KJ Martin coming toward him. He knew he couldn't catch the ball cleanly and lay it up himself. So what did he do? He just tipped it to his guy that was trailing the play. And that's the play that he needed to make, and that's the exact right play. And he knew, it all just fell into place. And there aren't enough guys in the NBA who see the court this well. And Isaiah Collier is one of those guys. And he did a fantastic job. And I think, man, he has all the ability in the world. But like we say every single Jazz Smack podcast, he just needs to work on his shooting. He obviously needs to work on his shooting. The shooting 25% from three is not going to cut it. I mean, there's no way he can be a 35-minute-a-night guy on a championship team shooting 25% from the three-point line. He has to increase that by 10% at least. And obviously, we would like a point guard that shoots 37 or so, but he's got to get up into the 35 range. He has to. Otherwise, I mean, people are going to suck off him all day long. He's going to be scouted harder and harder, and people are just going to leave him. That's going to be the bottom line. People will leave him until he learns to shoot the ball. So he's got to do that. So, but anyway, Isaiah Collier, I'm huge. I'm so high on that kid. I think that he has all the ability in the world. And I think that he and Walker are the two number one pieces right now of the youngest players on the team. I think he and Walker are the two guys that I firmly believe can be big pieces in terms of starting players playing big minutes on a really, really good team. I think those guys have that ability. Now, Isaiah Collier still has to work on his shooting. Walker Kessler still needs to work on his offense to be able to do some more things to expand his game in the paint and get a bit of a face-up game, not three-pointer, but out to 18 feet like I've previously said. That's what I want from Walker, just so he can space the floor when he has to and people can't suck off of him. Anyway, the other person to talk about tonight, a couple. So my guy Oscar Tshiebwe, he plays 20 minutes and goes 8 for 9 from the field and gets 13 rebounds, 4 on the offensive end. I mean, that guy, he's just such a likable guy. I mean, he never does anything that's beyond his ability, but his ability to get rebounds is just absolutely remarkable. And I would not object to Oscar being on the Jazz bench as a reserve player for the next few years. Honestly, I wouldn't mind him graduating out of the G League and being on the Jazz roster, just because I think that his unselfish nature and his ability and his desire to actually help his team win more so than just looking at it from a personal stats standpoint, which is obviously what he does. I mean, he's talked about it himself in interviews. This is the type of guy you actually do want on your bench. Someone who's in it for the team and willing to do whatever he can to get wins for the teams, get extra possessions for the team, etc., etc. The guy is truly a gem of a human being. He's great. And I can't say enough good things about the way he played tonight. The other one is obviously Keyonte led the team in minutes tonight. He led the team in field goal attempts with 21. He led the team in points with 28, 6 assists, 3 rebounds. And he shot 9 for 21 from the field, 5 for 11 and 3, 5 for 6 from the free throw line. So he led the team in field goal attempts. He led the team in free throws with 6. Those are really big numbers. And obviously, I would prefer that he has less. I prefer that he has fewer shots. I think that would be. I don't think the long-term success of the Jazz in the way we want it to be in terms of being one of the best teams in the league with having the ability to compete for a title at some point. Obviously, Keyonte can't lead the team in field goal attempts for the Jazz to do that. He just can't. I mean, that's just not going to work. And he can't lead the team in minutes either. I mean, he has not shown that he has that is a success for the Jazz as a franchise when he is doing those things. I mean, he would have to show immense improvement from this point if the Jazz are going to be a really high-level team with him playing that many minutes and shooting that many shots, consuming that many possessions. It's just not in the cards in terms of my perspective on it. That's the way I see it right now. I root for the guy. I'm going to root for all the Jazz players, but he needs immense improvement from where he is right now in order for the Jazz to win at a high level with him putting up these type of numbers. But anyway, for the most part, the other thing, let's just talk about Olynyk for a second and New Orleans for a second. So Olynyk comes in tonight and he plays really well. I mean, he started out the game playing really well. He ends up playing 26 minutes, 10 for 14 from the field, 3 for 4 on 3, 3 for 5 from the free throw line, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, 26 points. So he leads the New Orleans Pelicans in points. And he had a phenomenal game. Absolutely phenomenal. Points, rebounds. He leads the team in both of those. And this is the Kelly Olynyk that I think we all miss in terms of ball movement, just playing smart basketball. And it's really nice to see him having success again. And he's obviously a super popular player among his former Jazz teammates. I mean, after the game, I was watching the Pelicans, and they kept on showing him talking and joking with all the Jazz players. I mean, he talked to Juzang for a while. He talked to Keyonte. He talked to Lowry and Walker for a long time. I mean, obviously, all those guys are friends with Kelly, and Kelly was a really popular player when he was in Salt Lake. And I really like to see Kelly do well. I mean, a Gonzaga guy, I cheer for the Gonzaga guys all the time. I always will. And Kelly was terrific tonight, and I love seeing Kelly play well. I mean, I think the fans appreciated him while he was here. He just seems like a really good guy. He's never had any issues, never caused any problems off the court or in the locker room. I mean, those are the type of guys you want on your team, and that's why Ainge went and brought him in, because he wanted a culture guy as much as anything, somebody to, be a big part of laying a cultural foundation for the team. So one of the first things Ainge did was he brought in Kelly because he knew what type of a guy he was, both on the court and in the locker room. And that's why he was here. And then, they got off to a start and they won some games and they kind of laid the foundation for a culture, and then Ainge traded him, which is okay as well. So Kelly went on to Toronto, and now he's in New Orleans. But it's really nice to see Kelly play well. It's just good all the way around. And the other guy is, so Zion Williamson, I mean, it's really interesting what the Pelicans are doing with Zion. It seems like they're trying to play him at point forward right now. I mean, he's not just, he certainly is more passive on offense than he has been in the past, where he's not just getting the ball and trying to take it to the basket like he has in the past on every single possession. I mean, he's picking and choosing his spots where he's attacking the basket. I mean, tonight he led the team in assists, in 9 assists, and against only 1 turnover, and he still shot really well from the field, a really high percentage, at 61%. And I think this is actually a really good role for Zion. I think he's obviously a capable passer. He's not a skilled passer like Kyle Filipowski. He doesn't have that ability. But Zion is a willing passer, and if you're putting him into a situation where he's not just attacking the basket all the time, and he can be a facilitator in kind of the same role that maybe Scottie Pippen was a facilitator at the forward position, I think that's a better role for Zion, and maybe a role that if the Pelicans don't move off of Zion and trade him for, a big package of players, maybe this is actually the role that they will utilize him in moving forward. And I think that's a good role for Zion. Obviously, he still needs to work on his shooting. He still needs to get in better shape, and he still actually needs to play games rather than sitting games. I mean, good grief. The guy is playing. I mean, I believe this was his 22nd game played of the year. I mean, he needs to play more games. He needs to be in better shape. He needs to be engaged both on and off the court in the franchise, in being the best basketball player that he can be. And that includes eating correctly, getting the cardio in, and having, any improved body fat percentage. He just has to be that. I mean, he can't play so heavy. I mean, that's going to shorten his career. I mean, in reality, it's not good for him in his overall health, regardless of basketball. So he just needs to be in better shape, period. But anyway, that's really all I wanted to talk about tonight. I'm really happy that the Jazz took the loss tonight after winning that last game. I thought tonight was real trouble, and so the Jazz had to sit all those guys, and fortunately they did take the loss, and this kind of it helps making up for that last game where obviously they pulled out the win with that last second with Walker dunk. But tonight, obviously, the whole franchise knew that they need to do everything possible to lose this game. So they did that, and they were successful in that. And so we're still in the hunt for, one of those 3 worst records. Let's hope that this continues, because we want to see development of the youth, but we also want to be in the running for one of those top 3 draft choices. Anyway, for those watching on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe. And also, for those watching on X, please follow us. And we will talk to everybody, after the next Jazz game, or possibly before, with some further analysis of Jazz players and the NBA in general. So we appreciate everybody watching tonight, and we will talk to everybody later. So long, everybody.